Hi there guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Susan Netherkett. I am a long-time professional artist and as of late a master's student in visual art. In this video, I'm going to be showing you some of what is probably the least sexy in what an artist does, and that is the work that is not the artwork. There is a constant parade of different activities that happen in the studio that are to do with organisation and pottering and cleaning and finding ways to organise all the art supplies and duties and things that need to happen in the studio. And I've actually come to really respect over the years that these tasks, not only are they important to the functioning of being a professional artist and running a business, but they're also part of the creative process in their own way. And I find myself turning to pottering in the studio and doing these kinds of tasks on days when I just can't quite bring myself to the creative project that I'm doing. So you can see me here. I have just been wrapping up a painting that I sold, ready for a customer to come and pick up. And that's always a little bit of a process of putting it together, wrapping it up, writing a little lovely thank you card and sticking that on. I also decided on this day to do something that I'd been thinking about for quite a while, and that was to take this body of work down that has been stored on this cupboard since the exhibition they were in finished in 2024. So I cleared a space on my shelf and started the process of moving them out of my field of vision. The reason that I wanted to do this is that I do find that when I'm working on a particular body of work, and probably more accurately when I'm developing a really new body of work that is quite different to what I've been doing, I don't find it helpful to have old work around me. I want to start to surround myself with the new work, with any kind of inspirational material that I'm using to inspire me with that work. So I decided to take them down and put them into storage so that I'm not looking at them all the time. I will just drop in here that if you've seen anything you like in this range of paintings, they are available on my website. So I'll leave a link in the description so you can go and find them if you would like to. So after I made a space for those on my shelf and stored them away, then it was time to find a way to start hanging up the pieces that I have been working on recently. Now, I have been working on canvases that had been removed from stretcher bars. So they're just sheets of canvas that I have been taping to boards and working on. So they're unstretched and I can always go and stretch them later. But I find this a really convenient way to work. So just using the vertical storage and the hooks that I have on these cupboards, I just put bulldog clips onto the top of them and hung them from those hooks. So I find the rotating paintings that I can keep on this cupboard is a really helpful way to store the paintings, but also a way to keep the work that I'm working on around me, because I find that I'm constantly bouncing off all of the new pieces as they're coming. This one here, I wasn't quite sure if it was dry yet, and I wanted to make sure I didn't get oil paint all over myself if it was still a little bit wet. So I popped my apron on and started to remove the tape so that I can hang that one up on bulldog clips as well, so it can finish drying. Now, before you tell me in the comments, I know my ladder is pretty rickety and in a very precarious position, and I probably should use the A-frame ladder, but I just find this lovely old wooden ladder so adorable, and I love storing it in the studio because it's a little bit aesthetic. So you'll have to bear with me every time I go up and down it thinking she's going to fall off at any minute. The other thing that I got into in the studio recently was finally sorting and reorganizing a whole bunch of acrylic paints that I have had in various different places for probably about 18 months now. Some of them are still packed away in containers that I take with me when I go and teach workshops interstate. Some of them were in containers for specific projects and I'd wanted to keep them grouped, but then I kind of abandoned those projects. But I have been working a lot more in the acrylics lately as I have been doing a little bit of commission work and I needed to have them out and organized. So I decided that I would have a bit of a reorganization session with them, which I always find tremendously satisfying. There's something that happens inside me when I organize in the studio. There's something about the pottering around in my space and organizing things by color. It's just such a low pressure way to be engaging in the studio. And it feels like I'm kind of preparing myself for the next body of work. And I tend to have a little bit of a ritual of a big cleanup and a big reorganization in the studio every time I'm starting a significant new body of work. So you'll have to let me know in the comments if you're like that too, if the pottering and the cleaning around the studio is actually kind of an integral part of your creative process. It's also, of course, just a necessary thing, like with these oil sticks and the R&F drawing oils that I have been using a lot recently in the studio. And I just had them lying around on my palette, and I really needed to put them away somewhere where they're a little bit more airtight because they do dry when they're exposed to the air. So I have these great plastic containers that zip up that are actually meant for travel, but I find really useful for art supplies because they're clear and I can see what is inside of them. And they're just travel packing cases that I picked up at Kmart. I'm not sure if they're still making them, but I've been using them for so many different suppliers and they're absolutely perfect for my oil sticks. So that was great to organize those too. I have seen tips of ways that other people organize them online as well, and YouTube videos. I get so much great information from other artists in the way that they store and organize all of their art supplies. So you'll have to let me know if you have a bit of a fetish about that too. Something else that I really needed to do that I've been staring at every time I've been in the studio the last few months is clean my windows. You can probably see in this video how hazy they look. They hadn't been cleaned for quite a few months. And so I decided on this beautiful crisp winter's day that was lovely and sunshiny that I would finally go outside and take the fly wires off and actually give them a really good clean. Had to call in the hubby to give me a hand with getting the ladder out here. And then I got to it with really cleaning all the dirt off the outside of the windows and then getting out the window cleaner and really giving them a good scrub. I sit at my studio table in front of these windows pretty much every day working, and it is very, very sunny through these windows when the sun comes out in winter because all of the deciduous trees lose their leaves. And so I really, really notice it in winter time when they've gotten really dirty because the sun is shining through and all I can see is the dirt on the windows. So it just feels so good to do something like cleaning windows. There's something about it that's almost like cleaning the soul or something. When your windows are crystal clear and you can see the garden outside beautifully, there's just something about it that makes you feel like a really proficient human that you got around to actually cleaning to that level. And I'm always kind of poking around and tidying up in the studio, but it's these sorts of deep cleaning projects, I think, that often get left aside. And it was really good just to hop in there and get it done both on the outside and the inside. And then, of course, came the requisite reorganizing of all my little trinkets on my window seat. I absolutely love this window seat in my studio, and I spend a lot of time around this space. So I also did a little bit of a cleanse of my space as well. I've got a beautiful bit of Palo Santo that I'm burning here. And I often burn different essential oils and things in the studio too, because I do find that actually really helps me to set intention in the space. There's always the never-ending pottering task of watering my beautiful studio plants. And you can just see me here, I'm watering those. I have these kind of not very attractive little birds that I can fill up in the pots, which even though they're not the most attractive, are actually really great for the plants. It was school holidays when I was doing a lot of this cleaning, and one of the jobs I had on my list was that I had a huge pile of canvases and packing materials that I had been storing in the corner of my teenage daughter's room. And she's been very good at putting up with this for a long time, but she asked me if I could please reorganize that and if there was stuff that I could move to my studio so her room didn't feel as cluttered. So I, of course, said, yes, darling, I will do that for you, and pulled out some of the canvases that I have that are pre-framed in beautiful timber out of there, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. So that I could clear the space for her, but also I want to use some of these canvases for my master's exhibition. And I'm kind of up to the stage now where I'm ready to work on one of these large canvases, which is a huge 120 centimetre by 120 centimetre canvas. So I got them out, I cleaned them up because they were quite dusty, and I took the canvases out of their frames and went about the task of reorganizing my studio so that I could fit these in there. Now, anyone who is an artist will know that the task of organizing and storing these kinds of large items is a never-ending challenge, and it's one that I have developed the most random system for managing over the years. You can see here I have some boxes on top of a filing cabinet with a piece of board placed on top, which is where I'm storing the frames. And as you can see here, I don't think the storing of this particular frame is actually a very good idea because it comes out way too far and I know I'm going to knock my head on it. So I found another corner of the studio right next to my storage shelves and cleaned a whole bunch of stuff out of there that I didn't need anymore, so that I could reorganize it and use it for the storage of these large canvases and frames. So I did a bit of a tidy up there, gave it a good vacuum. It's amazing how much dust gathers in the corners of these storage places, gave it a good clean out, and then it was ready to move in this large frame, which I think will fit absolutely perfectly in this spot. Of course, the process of organising large canvases and frames is never linear. I find that it always is a bit of a Tetris game. I feel like I move things around and then think I've got the organisation right, only to discover that I haven't, and I've got more things I need to add in, and so I have to reorganise it all over again. It's a bit of a process. And I really wanted to clear a whole bunch of things out of my daughter's room. So this was a pretty big job, but it was actually a really rewarding job because it made me take stock of actually what I do have. I've got quite a few large stretchers and framed canvases and pieces that I can use. I can always take canvases off and attach new ones onto them if I need to. So it was kind of like a bit of a stock take as well in realizing what I already have prepared and ready to go. So with the final linen canvas going in there, I felt like I'd done a pretty good job of organising these items. I also do have a space behind the big painting board that I keep on an easel in my studio that I can slide things behind. So this is a really good place for sort of pieces that are in progress. Now I'm taking you out into my backyard because something else I did on this day with regards to clearing out my daughter's room was I spray painted these cardboard boxes. Now the reason I did this is because I have a whole bunch of bubble wrap and painting corners and things that are basically for shipping and transporting paintings that I don't want to get rid of because A, they're plastic and I don't want them going into landfill, and B, who wants to spend their money on buying more packaging materials when you have already perfectly good packaging materials around you? So I tried to think, how can I store these in a way where they're put away and not taking up space in the way they were in my daughter's room, but also not unsightly. So I had these old boxes. We have a toilet paper subscription with the company who gives a crap, and we have a lot of these boxes that are all the same size, which I found when I was clearing out her room. So I thought, if I spray painted these white and put all the bubble wrap and things in those, I could very easily slot them in up on top of my big cupboards in my studio and do another layer of vertical storage with them. So that is what I did. So for this job, I actually did bother to go and get the A-frame ladder so that I wasn't killing myself on the other one, because it was quite a job getting up there and reorganizing everything. And I brought each of the boxes up and slid them in underneath the storage containers that I already had up there. And look, there was a lot of back and forth and changing things around. I always have a bit of a giggle when I edit a video because it always looks so much more linear and organized than it actually was. I was moving things around and trying to get the right configuration for quite some time in reality. But yeah, it ended up being a really great solution, and also a really cheap, easy solution. So highly recommend the spray painting of boxes to store your bubble wrap so that you're not looking at ugly bubble wrap piled up everywhere. And yeah, you'll have to tell me in the comments if you think this was a good storage solution. I don't think it looks too bad. And then it was time to move on with what I like to call the more artisanal work in the studio. In this particular case, it is prepping this canvas, this 120 by 120 centimetre canvas, with some coloured gesso for a big painting that I'm wanting to make for my master's project. So you can just see me here cleaning that down, getting that ready. And I'm going to mix up a gesso for this that matches the colour of the linen that I usually paint on. I have already talked quite a bit before on my channel about how I've been playing around with making canvases look like linen, which I won't go into here because I have already talked about it at length. But basically how I do it is I mix up a existing coloured gesso, which is made by the company Matisse. I think it's called Neutral Grey 2. With some other colours. I use some raw umber and I think also some yellow ochre, just to warm it up a bit and get the tone so that it matches linen pretty perfectly, because I find it very helpful to paint on a toned surface. So you can see here that I've got a pretty close match with my colour, and I'm ready to start painting that onto my canvas. Now, I love the artisanal work in the studio. It's right up there with pottering and cleaning in terms of getting myself mentally prepared and ready to take on a new body of work or a piece of work that, for whatever reason, I find a little bit challenging. What I'm prepping for here is a really large painting of bark. You can see there in the corner of my screen a few of the bark studies that I have made so far in my master's, and I want to upscale and create a really, really large one. And it's something that's a little bit outside my wheelhouse and a bit of a challenge. So I find when I'm prepping up a surface for a project like this, it really gives me the time and the space to mentally prepare with taking on the challenge. And one of the reasons I'm painting this on this canvas that is painted to look like linen and not linen is so that if it fails, it's not going to be a big deal, because canvas is nowhere near as expensive as the linen. So it's kind of a little bit of a mental trick. Okay, here's another lovely little artisanal task in the studio where I'm just putting in some nails, some little tacks into the side of my wheelie cart that I have next to my studio table so that I've got somewhere to store my swatches. I have so many different swatch cards of different products that I use in the studio, and I find that they're just always floating around and sitting on work surfaces and getting in the way. So I thought, very simple solution, just tap in a few little tacks into the side of this trolley and then I can hang them on bulldog clips. So I was very happy with that little hack, and that was a fun little thing to get happening in the studio. Another piece of work that is not the artwork in the studio that takes up quite a bit of time is the preparing and shipping of art that I've sold on my website. So you can see me here, I am getting into my flat file drawers to pull out some artworks on paper that I recently sold. And it's always a bit of a process to find them. Again, I'm often searching for quite some time. And then it is a matter of getting all the packaging materials out that I need to safely ship that art. I did have a lot of bubble wrap in this drawer, so it was really great to get that out earlier and find that I had much easier access to my packaging supplies without having to take everything out. So you can just see me here preparing the cardboard and the plastic sleeves and sliding the artwork into there. I always triple check the title of the artwork against the invoice that I've gotten off my website to make sure that I'm shipping the right thing, because the last thing you want is to send out the wrong item to your customer. So once I've made sure that I have actually got that correct, I just slide that in. I also have a range of postcards and stickers that I have made for when I am shipping my art out to customers. So whenever I sell an original, I always want to prepare it and make it look beautiful for my client. So you can just see me here sticking one of my studio stickers onto the back over the seal of the package. And I also have postcards that offer people a small discount to future purchases. And I have little stickers that I use to stick them on that also have pieces of my artwork. So I find all these little details just make people feel like when they receive that package in the mail that it's a little bit more exciting. I also have a cupboard where I keep all of my shipping containers and packets. So this is a A3 rigid mailer that I'm just prepping to slide my artwork package into. The packaging and shipping of art actually takes an extraordinary amount of time, and shouldn't be minimized by any artist. It's not my favorite thing to do. I've done a lot of it over the years. So it's really important to have things well organized and stored in places where you can have easy access to them, so that when those orders do come in, that you can just get it out very easily and send it off without any problems. Another thing that I have to do pretty regularly in the studio is make some fine art prints, which I didn't always do. I actually outsourced my fine art prints, my giclée prints, to a professional printer for many years. But about a year ago, I bought my own giclée printer, so I can now print my own, which is just wonderful. So you can see me here. I've got a large sheet of the beautiful watercolor style paper that I print onto. which I actually buy in A2 sheets and cut it down if I need to print a print that's smaller. For this one, I needed to make a print that was A4 size, so I needed to cut it down twice to get an A4 sheet of paper out of that large sheet. Having the printer right there next to my computer has been a really great addition to my studio, but I do find that I'm always encountering glitches and tricky things with getting the technology to work. It seems to always be the way with technology, but basically I prepare the print to size in Photoshop before I print it. Now, of course, on this day, I discovered as I was about to print it that I was out of ink in a couple of my cartridges. So I just had to replace those so that I wouldn't run out of colour mid-print. And then I was able to print it out and get it ready for my customer. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you've enjoyed joining me for a bit of a studio zhuzh, a bit of cleaning and reorganizing and getting into a bit of artisanal work. If you've liked what you've seen, I'd love it if you could give this video a like. And if you're not already subscribed and you like what you're seeing, then make sure you subscribe so you can catch up with me next time. If you stayed until the end, can you give me a broom emoji? It's been a bit of a cleaning video, so I feel like that's appropriate. And yeah, I hope that you're doing really well, whatever you're doing in your studio. Don't forget to let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.